So we're pleased to welcome five distinguished experts for panel discussion on the role of regional integration in promoting investment. It is my honor to introduce the panel moderator, Deputy Dean Byungsik Jung. Dr. Jung is the Deputy Dean of ADBI. He's specializing in international finance, trade agreements, and international law. He previously served as Director General of International Tax at the Ministry of Economic and Finance of the Republic of Korea, and as a bureau member in negotiating the terms of reference for the UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation. He also served as Deputy Director General for the International Finance Bureau and as co-chair of the G20 International Financial Architecture Working Group. Dr. Jung was responsible for negotiating various tax treaties and numerous free trade agreements between the Republic of Korea and the partner countries. I am pleased to give the floor to Deputy Dean Jung.
Thank you, Leilei. Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Even though it's virtually, it's a really exciting moment because this is the second time for me to moderate. I'm Byungsik Jung, as introduced. I'm Deputy Dean of this organization, ADBI. Today's session is the role of regional integration in promoting investment. The topic is the role of regional integration. It's a fascinating topic. ADBI pursuing this the great agenda. Regional cooperation and integration is one of the key area for both organizations is pursuing for Asia-Pacific reasons. As you know, investment is really key, a cornerstone of innovation, growth, and long-term actually the growth. However, many Asian economies face the savings and investment gaps. Through these regional integration, main elements of regional integration is trade agreements and infrastructure connectivity and financial cooperation. With that, we can expect there is some kind of a possible pathway to address these challenges. So today we'll explore how regional integration can catalyze private sector participation and strengthen Asia as an investment hub and ensure that investment flows are inclusive and sustainable. We are joined by really distinguished panel of experts from ADB and government and academia. So, just a house rule. I want to share this house rule with you. Each speaker is supposed to make a presentation for 10 minutes. And then we'll have a Q&A session, including taking questions from audience for 20 or 30 minutes. Then when you have specific questions, as Yahweh explained to you, please use the Q&A chat box and then designate specific speakers. Okay, so I'm going to introduce each speakers when they make presentations. We have today 4 speakers and 2 from ADB. One is from the embassy and one is from academic side. Okay, to begin, I'd like to invite the first speaker, the Bruce Gosper, Vice President of Administration and Cooperative Management at ADB, to share his insights on how regional integration can enhance investor confidence and what lessons can we draw from frameworks like ASEAN, RCEP, and CPTPP. Just for your good information, Mr. Gosper has 40 years of experience working with the multilateral and regional institutions, dealing with the trade and economic policy and running large public sector organizations. Therefore, when you have some question regarding trade or multilateral economic cooperation framework, please raise your question to specifically Mr. Bruce. Okay? Bruce, are you ready?
Yes, thank you.
And then you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Jung. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I really welcome the initiative that ADBI has taken to convene this discussion on a really important subject, regional cooperation and integration. In fact, it's one of our 5 2030 themes because we think it's essential for economic growth in the Asia Pacific and because doing it the right way will contribute to the strongest possible development outcomes. Now, I'd say at the outset, a lot of people assume that there's choices made in focusing on regional cooperation and integration about regional versus multilateral. And I want to say that there is no such choice. Both the multilateral framework and the regional context are important for the interests of developing countries and for the Asia Pacific region. This is not a discussion about whether one chooses a multilateral way for trade liberalization and reform and narrow, inclusive, inward-looking regional agreements. What we talk about when we talk about RCI is built around the concept of open regionalism. Because essentially what we're looking for is to create the context to ensure that our members have the best opportunity to attract capital and technology and partnerships which will best build their economic capability and their access to those assets and the markets of the world. So it's very much something that's focused on how we actually achieve the deeper integration, which will achieve those outcomes. Better investment, because capital's important, the right technology to ensure development of local economies, and access to markets. Global markets, whether they be in Europe or North America or Asia, wherever they might be. So that's an important context I want to make clear. Nevertheless, the work that's underway in Southeast Asia, in West Asia, in the Pacific, around regional cooperation and integration is quite important. And it's something that we're putting a lot of effort into. We're lifting our own engagement with this subject in various ways. So let me turn to a couple of questions that you asked in particular. First of all, about how regional integration can enhance investor confidence and why this is important. Well, first and foremost, of course, it lowers policy uncertainty across borders. Investors are looking for the right balance between opportunity and risk. Capital is mobile. There are choices for where that investment can go. We want it to come here. We want it to be invested in the right things and to build the right sorts of capability. So we have to create the context for that to happen. And removing policy uncertainty is a big part of it. It leads to larger, more connected markets, of course, that are not constrained by narrow national borders, but more integrated markets, which of course unlocks much broader consumer bases and allows much more opportunity for capital to see its costs amortized over a period of time. It lowers transaction costs and frictions of one sort or another through things like harmonized customs processes, mutual recognitions arrangements, and the like. It anchors confidence of investors. Investors make judgments about the appetite that countries have for investment, and they look for signals that that investment is welcome and will find the right place within it. So, cross-border infrastructure, which shows that economies are looking at how they support the right sort of outcomes through things like transport and logistics, supply chains, connectivity, digital corridors, those sorts of things is particularly important. And it's a sort of reflection, if you like, through of collective action and governance towards such things. And the investment itself can help catalyze private sector investment through supply chains, through partnerships, through inputs of one sort or another. It can facilitate private sector investment. So all of those things are important to enhancing investor confidence, and all of them can be strengthened through the right sort of regional integration efforts of the sort that we've seen underway in ASEAN for several decades now, quite productively. Some of the things that we see arising from the lessons, if we look at ASEAN, the processes it's had through the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, through the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which includes many countries in the Asian region. And indeed, if we look at some of the other regional cooperation agreements, SASEC in South Asia, of course, and CAREC in West Asia, all of these things demonstrate some of the lessons that are important in ensuring that regional cooperation and integration delivers the sort of outcomes that we're looking for. In ASEAN, it's been a process which has been gradual, flexible, has brought along everybody in a more or less an incremental process, which has looked at goods and services and is now looking, of course, at issues of deeper integration, which will be necessary to deliver, I'm sure, the larger investment gains that are looked for. What's quite clear, I think, from some of the agreements that we've seen is that higher standard agreements will get higher quality investment. TPP, for instance, which goes further in some areas, particularly around services and investment, intellectual property and such areas, gives additional areas of clarity and consistency, which will attract different sorts of investment and investments that are probably looked for in many countries who are looking to move up the value chain, move from base manufacturing or assembly to more valuable, higher value production of one sort or another, including in services where the returns will be much greater. What's quite clear, I think, from the processes that we've seen underway in the past few decades is that consistent political commitment and the institutional mechanisms that are set up as part of these agreements matter quite a bit. And that's been, I think, well demonstrated by the sort of delays that we've occasionally seen in these sorts of processes, where some members have not been in a position to participate in a full way. Equally, we've seen that trade facilitation can yield very large results. So some of the sort of issues around things like single windows and streamlined documentation of one sort or another really are quite influential. Issues like rules of origin, highly technical, but when they're resolved, they make a big impact in ensuring that regional value chains are more easily accessible and provide a better environment for firms to invest. So these sorts of things are quite important. Having political commitment and the institutional mechanisms, as I said, is really important. Infrastructure connectivity is an important complement to this. And, I do recall that during the pandemic, some of the problems in supply chains were evident in a new way we hadn't seen before, and it sort of has reinforced the point that connectivity is important. Resilience related to institutional and infrastructure are important issues to be addressed in these issues. So I think those things are all quite important. Policy harmonization is one of the key outcomes from a good regional cooperation process. And this is quite important. It's quite challenging because, as we know, we're not dealing just with the flow of goods. We're dealing with issues that often relate to a number of regulatory agencies in any national setting. But it is quite important because it does lower compliance costs. It provides transparency and credibility around the environment for investment. It improves the resilience of supply chains when these issues are addressed as part of the process, because it reduces the prospect of lacunae, of gaps in the process, or unforeseen challenges emerging from one point to another. So policy harmonization is a challenging area, but it's quite important to ensure that the right environment is there for investment flows to move quite quickly. Cross-border, just talk a little bit. I won't talk about regional financing because I think one of our other speakers, Leilei Song, will talk a little bit about that. But some of the work that ADB is doing relates to issues like transport corridors, energy connectivity, in particular the ASEAN power grid is something that the bank has indicated it's strongly committed to facilitate, and we've indicated funding of $10 billion over coming years in helping achieve that. Digital connectivity is a growing demand across the region, and that's only been turbocharged by the advent of generative AI over the last year or two. And we see demand for that increasing, and it will be quite important in ensuring that we've got the right environment to attract investment. People need to be able to have the digital capability to integrate with regional and global supply chains, to manage financial flows in a different way, to skill workforces, all those sorts of things. Increasingly, one of the demands that we see coming up in discussions around integration, of course, is for resilient and climate-aligned infrastructure, and often that has cross-boundary implications of one sort or another. So those sorts of issues are also quite important. So in sum, if I can just conclude for the moment by saying the experience we see with regional cooperation is that it's really quite important to ensure that we're attracting the right investment which would suit national aspirations and the development objective that we all share. That there are lessons that we have from experience over the last few decades that demonstrate how we can best achieve these outcomes, and plenty of work ahead of us. Achieving deeper integration will be necessary to attract that capital, to attract the technology, and to ensure that we're properly integrated with global markets. And the bank, ADB, is very much focused on how we can support our members in this endeavour, whether it's as a thought leader, as an honest broker and enabler of one sort or another, or whether it's as an operational partner and financier. Perhaps Dr. Jung, I'll stop there for the moment.
Oh, thank you so much, Bruce. You covered a very comprehensive area and very important elements of the regional integration. Thank you so much. Especially, I'm impressed with your the views. The regional integration is not a closed inward approach. It's open. It's also multilateral approach in the regional context, but still it's open. It's more expanding toward the outside. That's very important elements. And also you introduced some successful cases, RCEP and the CPTPP, which has a more higher standard for the investment. So the basic, according to your views, the elements of this regional integration is really give some certainty or confidence for investors, and also the grand vision for digital connectivity or infrastructure transportation corridor. Those things sponsored by the ADB is really a fundamental infrastructure for the further development, for the tightening regional integration. In that sense, I thank you so much for your sharing insightful the views on this approach. Thank you. Then let me invite the next speaker, Leilei Song. He's advisor, Office of Director General, Strategy, Policy and Partnership Department in ASEAN Development Bank. Leilei will talk about green financing and also financial cooperation. With that, let's invite Leilei Song for his presentation. Leilei.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jung. Thank you very much for the conference organizer inviting me to this very timely conference. It's great. I will speak after Mr. Gosper, our VP, spoke first, because at the end of his speech, he mentioned the role of the ADB in regional cooperation and integration. So before I turn into the topic on green investment, let me say a few words about the role for ADB in regional cooperation and integration. Mr. Kuroda gave the opening speech to this conference, and he joined ADB in 2005. After he joined ADB, actually, he set up an Office of Regional Economic Integration in 2005. And in 2006, ADB passed its first corporate strategy on regional cooperation and integration strategy. So under Mr. Kuroda, actually, ADB and ADBI did several joint major publications, 3 major publications. One is called Emerging Asian Regionalism. Yeah, Mr. Gosper mentioned that. That book advocates Asians' way of regional cooperation and integration for open regionalism. And there's another book on Seamless Asia, Infrastructure Development for Asia. And the third one was Regional Institution for Regional Cooperation. This trilogy of regional cooperation and integration, which were published from 2008 into 2010. Those 3 books gave us the foundation, theoretical foundation for regional cooperation and integration. ADB followed that approach in the past 2-3 decades. And now, on the leadership of President Kanda and Vice President Gosper, we're also now in the process of formulating a new operational approach for regional cooperation and integration ADB. And we would like to continue to focus ADB support for regional connectivity, for trade, investment, financial cooperation, and the regional public goods. And regional public goods are very fitting to the topic I'm going to talk about in a moment. So ADB would focus on these 3 priorities and would help our developing member countries to come together, because ADB has sub-regional programs, as our VP just mentioned, in Central Asia, CAREC, in South Asia, SASEC, and even in Southeast Asia, we have ADB's sub-regional program for Great Mekong sub-regions. And also we support ASEAN. And we want to utilize regional cooperation integration essentially to help the region to develop and to grow faster, because that's the mandate of ADB, and that's set up in ADB's charter. ADB is a regional institution. So our goal is for the region as a whole, for the region to develop together as a whole. So this is why ADB emphasized so much about the regional cooperation and integration. And this is also the goal for ADBI. I saw your logo. That's the ideas for developing Asia and the Pacific. And for ADB, now our corporate motto is to solve the complex challenges together. So this is regional cooperation integration. So let me move to the topic the organizer assigned me to talk about. So that's the role of regional cooperation and integration in promoting green investments. I think the role of regional cooperation, why we emphasize regional cooperation and regional integration so much in economic development, in economic growth. Essentially, regional economic integration would offer economies of scale, economies of scope, and also risk sharing. Yeah, let me elaborate three points in a little bit more details. When we say the regional integration, economic integration, essentially we connect national markets into a bigger, larger regional markets. With the larger markets, the private sector enterprises could utilize larger markets to produce for large market, to sell to such a larger market, and also to access more inputs from the larger markets. And from that, essentially, the larger markets provide economy of scales, lower costs, and also to provide a more competitive environment to get all the prices down and to benefit consumers and essentially also to promote production. So this is why we call it the integrated production and also integrated markets for regional economic development and regional economic growth, which would promote higher productivity growth and also to promote resilience for national economies when they face economic shocks. And when we say economies of scopes, with a bigger market, essentially you have more unified standards, and private sector players could, based on these unified standards, then to serve a big market, and then to utilize all the aspects of their products to fulfill essentially more objectives of the markets. And then we have also the risk sharing functions of the markets. When you have a big markets, when you have more players in the market, and when they're facing idiosyncratic shocks, then they can transfer their risks through financial markets, through insurance markets, to cover their risks and to cover their loss if the risks are realized. So those are the functions of the regional markets and why we promote regional integration for economic development. Then in the case of green investment, when we have a big markets, then essentially you can attract more of monies into such a market than to tailor for the green investment. Then you can also bundle projects. Essentially, you can have more projects to tailor for investors and a big portfolio of investment projects tailored for investors to invest in such market. So economy of scales would reduce the costs of investments, which would also facilitate green investment. And then the countries through these regional markets, they would be keen to formulate unified taxonomies, which will formulate standards for investment, which will also attract more investment, green investment. So all these are the benefits of the regional markets. And ADB also supports regional public goods, such as actions to fight climate change, to preserve biodiversity. And with big regional markets, and the private sector probably have the more opportunities to monetize certain benefits, so-called ecological services benefits, to monetize. When they can monetize those benefits, they would create more cash flows for their investment, which would make the returns on green projects higher, which would attract green investment. So those are the economy of scales. Essentially, the investment you to tackle several objectives from a regional cooperation perspectives. For certain infrastructure project, you would not only connect the countries through a connected infrastructure, but also you can generate trade, investment, financial flows to benefit all the countries in the region. But also you can provide regional public goods to tackle those transboundary, transnational challenges. So those are all the benefits offered by the regional integration. But I would also note a certain downside of the regional integration, particularly regional financial integration. Yeah, we do have a cost benefits. Everything has cost benefits. When we have a more integrated financial markets, then they would be more easily to transmit the shocks through the financial markets to all countries in the region. And the Asian financial crisis was a typical example because of highly integrated financial markets without corresponding regulation across borders, which essentially caused a major economic financial shock to the Asian region. Then after the Asian financial crisis, ASEAN and ASEAN plus three, China, Korea, and Japan came together, tried to formulate a cooperation framework to regulate cross-border financial flows, essentially tried to reduce the downsides of regional economic integration, then tried to reap more benefits from regional cooperation and the integration. So this is a caution. So we need to be cautious. We need to really keep a watch on the downside risks coming from the regional integration. But we really need to reap the benefits from regional cooperation and integration. So let me stop here. Yeah, I'm very happy to answer questions to follow on. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you, Leilei. Thank you so much. The key takeaways from your presentation is it's good for the regional integration is good for to attract private sector participation and through the increasing the scale of the economy and the harmonized standards. Therefore, it would give some more room for private player to join and monetize something for the commercial benefits. So in that sense, regional integration is a great deal. And then another point is regional integration downside. I'm quite interested to hear your views. Regional integration really have some downside. It means that contagion impact would severe increase. If my memory is correct, at the time after the financial crisis, 1997, Chairman Initiative was launched to prevent another recurring financial crisis through the regional financial cooperation, like the making some kind of quasi IMF fund. As a Chairman Initiative, final goal is the kind of regional IMF fund. So the main goal of this regional financial integration, financial cooperation, is to prevent the kind of the crisis through the collaboration among member countries. But it's quite interesting for you to hear your interpretation that the integration really also could deepen under some contagion impact. Okay, with that, let me invite the third speakers. Our third speaker is Ernesto H. Braam, Head of Economic Affairs and Development Cooperation, Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Let's listen to his presentation. Okay, Ernesto, you have the floor.
Well, good evening here. Thanks for inviting me. Good evening from South America, where I'm at the moment, actually in the Amazon rainforest. So I hope my connectivity will stay well, that the quality will continue. So, but yeah, let's see. Whatever I will say right now will be my personal view, and not represent the view of the Dutch government. And I will here and there make a few remarks that are not strictly, I would say, investment integration related, but more in the realm of political economy. So first, as others have said already, I think it's very timely, this topic, for two reasons. The first reason is because in my experience, investment and investment climate, promoting investment is often, or maybe even mostly, approached from a national perspective, national level. And secondly, with the tariff wars or tariff conflicts going on and increased protectionism, there is a greater need for regional integration. Now, just a small anecdote. When I moved many years ago from Japan to Thailand, I wanted to bring a Japanese car, actually a Nissan Odyssey, where my 3 young kids would fit, from Japan to Thailand. Now, this turned out to be very complicated, too complicated, because it was very difficult to take it out of Japan, but also very difficult to import it into Thailand. When I arrived in Thailand, I found out actually that Nissan is manufacturing in Thailand actually for quite some time, and that Japanese companies have invested in Southeast Asia for quite some time to gain access to a growing market, and secondly to avoid import restrictions. Now, sorry for Nissan, but in the end I bought a Swedish car. Now, this is not, of course, an advertisement. Now, the current adjustment of supply chains and diversification of trade is a longer existing trend, but has been accelerating since the first Trump presidency, and is even accelerating more so now. Asian, but also other countries, of course, do not want to be dependent on a single country for their exports and for their investments. Now, the Leilei Institute, in their June publication, mentioned that US tariffs have triggered a new urgency across the Indo-Pacific to recalibrate their economic policies. And the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, and the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, actually were earlier designed already to boost integration and to lower dependency on one or two countries for investment or trade. Now, the ADB's Asian Economic Integration Report of this year, 2025, mentioned that Asia's regional integration on foreign direct investment has advanced significantly, but less so than in trade integration. It mentions that integration on trade is comparable to the EU plus the UK. That's a very interesting, I think, finding of this report. And major areas for foreign investment are services, digital, and green industries. Actually, it mentions that 52% of FDI is intra-regional. Now, this can be further increased, maybe. Furthermore, ADB has supported regional integration with many programs and policy dialogue, which I fully supported when I was still more closely connected to ADB than I'm now even. But I think more can be done. The convening power of the ADB could be used more in trade talks and also in mediation of trade disputes between countries. Now, I agree with what Bruce Gosper, VP, just said on regional and multilateral integration, that they don't exclude each other, and that open regional integration is a very good thing. And after all, we don't live in a perfect world. But from, let's say, the European, or rather maybe the Dutch perspective, we are very much in favor or more of multilateral arrangements, which creates and safeguard equal rules for everyone, and which make it difficult to pick and choose certain rules that are in a country's favor. And meantime, I feel that more efforts could be made to support the rules-based international order, of which WTO, of course, is a an important part, and to avoid protectionism to take us on trade and investment into a downward spiral. So for that, I think this topic is very timely. Just will say a few words on the question that was in question on the point of institutional or capacity building initiatives that could help less developed economies attract and manage investment flows effectively. Well, having worked in a couple of less developed countries, I think first stronger investment promotion agencies are needed, and that can help bring in investments from abroad. Secondly, transparent PPP, public-private partnership frameworks, I think could greatly benefit bringing in attracting investments. And thirdly, better data availability and collection, plus credit info systems could also help less developed countries. So I'll leave it to that and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. Thank you so much. Yeah, you rightly point out that why this regional integration RCI is quite appropriate given these geopolitical tensions. Your view is quite well shared with the other participants. Yes, the Trump administration's focusing on their raising tariff to address all their challenges is to emphasize conversely the importance of regional cooperation integration in terms of diversification and for the method or ways to maintain these challenges through the cooperation among the regional countries. And also you mentioned that the combining power of ADB is quite essential. It means to stimulate the policy dialogue to figure out what's the best solution for regional member countries, regional economies. In that sense, ADBI should work further to facilitate this policy dialogue. Okay, I'm also interested in you're sharing the anecdote of how the trade facilitation is works for your even personal matters too. Okay, now it's time to invite our final speakers. Let me invite Professor Qinhua Su. Professor Qinhua Su is a Vice Dean of National Academy of Development and Strategy, Executive Dean of the Eurasian Research Institute, Renmin University of China. Okay, Professor Qinhua, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm here. Because of the Zoom, inside here, I cannot open my video. So with the assistance of my assistant, so we prepared a PowerPoint. Okay. So we shared with you and we invite you to give our comments. So my topic is about the unleashing regional synergies to mobilize private green investments. Firstly, I want to apologize for the time. I did a bit late because I was just back from Bangkok. So the core argument is that the massive gap in green investment stems from the high risk, low returns in the market for fragmentation faced by private capital. Deepening regional integration is the key to overcoming the dilemma. It can create a clear, predictable, and attractive investment landscape for private capital by scaling markets, harmonizing standards, and innovating financing instruments, thereby using regional dynamics to drive global solutions and address the insufficient momentum for global green development. I think today's topic is very interesting and valuable. Next one, that's I will with the 5 points to demonstrate what I'm thinking. So the next page. So from page 3 to page 5, I'm talking with the highlighting the core challenges. Global green transformation requires trillions of dollars investments. Yet why do major institutional investors with massive capital reserves, such as pension funds, insurance companies, and private equity firms, still hesitate to invest in green projects? Next, so according to UNCTAD data, global foreign direct investment (FDI) has declined for the third consecutive year, with particularly weak investment in key areas related to sustainable development goals. This has created a massive funding gap. Recognizing that public funds are far from sufficient, multiple international organizations are calling for public-private partnership (PPP) investment methods, with mobilizing private capital being a private objective. However, green investments face 3 major practical barriers for the private sectors. Actually, we have been meeting with different nation academic institutes, so we are talking about a lot about the financing and climate fund, etc. So we are all thinking that the UN SDG, the progress is not very satisfied because of the finance and also the financial support. So the page 5. The first challenge stems from fragmentation green projects. Many local projects are small-scale, highly decentralized, and risk-prone, lacking well-established investment platforms that fail to attract large-scale capital. Particularly in emerging markets, green projects often demonstrate mismatched risks and returns when evaluated by international capital. The second issue involves inconsistent market standards and policies. Developing countries' green project markets remain undeveloped. Undevelopment means loss of opportunity. With no mutual recognitions of standards between nations, that is the problem, let alone nature market benchmarks adopted by developed countries. So, moreover, supporting policies for green development in developing countries are incomplete and frequently changing. Consequently, cross-border investments face regulatory barriers that increase transaction costs and compliance risks. The third obstacle is the excessive high finance costs. Persistent global high interest rates make it difficult for international capital to mobilize substantial funds for high-risk green investments. Meanwhile, rising U.S. tariff barriers, I should again emphasize this point, I'm sorry, have significantly pressured the manufacturing investments in Vietnam, India, Brazil, and South Africa, and Thailand. I was just back from Thailand, so I did the field study. I felt a lot about this. These challenges have led multinational corporations to adopt a conservative investment strategies, leaving a funding gap for global green development that may remain unadjusted in the short term. So page 6 to 11. So page 7, multiple data source indicates a pronounced risk-free trend in global capital flows despite robust green demand. International project finance in the renewable energy sector declined during the first half of 2025 due to macroeconomic uncertainties. So my page 8 shows that capital increasingly flows to mature markets perceived safe with this one, to resulting in uneven capital distribution. Nevertheless, regions have proactively addressed these challenges through regional integration measures that create scale, reduce risks, and establish clear regulations, that thereby fostering a favorable environment for private capital. So page 10, I'm discussing about the ASEAN. ASEAN member states have joined developed ASEAN Green Bond Standards, which provides a coordinated and transparent definition of what constitutes green projects within the regions. This standard offers clarity and comparability for international private investors. Issues can leverage the standards to access investors across the ASEAN region, while investors can more easily evaluate and compare the green bonds from different countries. This significantly reduces the due diligence costs and greenwashing risks associated with cross-border green investments there by facilitating the flow of private capitals. The expectation of countries, here is the case study, like India demonstrates that the national level transparent renewable energy auction offering long-term power purchase agreement to private developers can attract multinational investors and financiers to invest in cross-border grid interconnections and renewable energy markets, energy parks. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, competitive auctions have reduced the levelized cost of solar photovoltaic PV power by over 80% in the past decade, making it the cheapest electricity source in many regions. This proves that clear policy signals and a large-scale deployment can significantly reduce investment costs and the risks for private capitals. Here, the following is some suggestions. It's very interesting when during the APEC Beijing year in 2014, I prepared for my central government about the Leaders Summit. There is one thing is we comment that use the PPP to promote the APEC infrastructure. I think here it can be used also in the green infrastructure and for the green finance and the bonds and other lots of the financial subsidies into this field. The following recommendations focus on empowering and incentivizing the private sector through regional cooperation. So the first proposal is to establish a regional green project preparation and aggregation platform led by regional development banks such as ADBI or private sector airlines. This platform would conduct technical due diligence, design financial structures, and enhance bankability for small and medium-sized green projects within the regions. I have been doing the field study also in Hong Kong this summer, the whole month, August. So there are a lot of things we can do in the green finance. If we have time, we have discussed in detail later. These projects would then be packaged into standardized investment products, for example, green asset-backed securities for large institutional investors. This consolidation approach transforms fragmented and high-risk projects into scaled and bankable assets, addressing the challenge of private capital not knowing where to start. The second recommendation is to promote regional level mutual recognition of green policies and regulations. This is very important, including also the standard and also is important again. On the regional integration framework such as RCEP and ASEAN coordinate green standards, certifications and regulatory framework should be established, for instance, facilitating mutual recognition of product carbon footprint accounting methods can significantly reduce compliance costs for cross-border green trade and investment. Our team has been doing it under the leadership of our government. This was also both inside China, also outside China, together with our international partners. This would also enable a seamless regional recognition of companies' green performance and supply chain transparency, providing investors in green development projects with clear benchmark. The last one I will be finishing soon. The third recommendations focuses on innovation and expanding regional risk sharing mechanisms, establishing regional public-private partnership, green guarantee funds, or providing initial loss reserve could leverage private capital through public financing to enhance credit worthiness for cross-border green projects. Public institutions or developed banks could provide initial catalytic funding for such insurance products, with subsequent operations and underwriting gradually transition to private sector execution. By implementing market-driven risk-sharing mechanisms, the perceived risks for private investors, especially early entrants, would be significantly reduced, thereby unlocking private investment several times the size of the guaranteed amount. So here I'm do my conclusions. While green technologies are rapidly evolving worldwide, one of my articles was read by 20 million people audience. So it's about the green development. The green development is very popular and very common by the whole country. So the green development projects face multiple obstacles, with financing gaps becoming increasingly evident. The key to mobilize the private capital lies not in subsidies, but in designing and creating a functional market. ADB can play very key important role here. Regional integration is the key solution. It's time to break down barriers and jointly establish a sizable, well-regulated and risk-controlled regional green investment market for the private sector. So I joined also the UN, the SDG 2030, the goal, the progressing, the high level, the political discussion and the dialogue the year before last. So many people are very disappointed about the progress of the SDG goal. So I think in the finance, in the banking, the field, we can do together hand in hand to push the SDG progressing faster and forward. Thank you, everybody. I cannot share with you with my video, so but I'm bring my very good will to all of you. Thanks for the invitation of ADBI, and I hope we can do lots of cooperation with each other. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Qinhua. You emphasized the fragmentation, really the big hurdle for the boosting green investment, and that's in that sense, harmonize the standards and through the mutual recognition or setting up the common standard is really one key element to boost the green investment. Thank you so much. By the way, the harmonized standards among regional economy would be a obstacle later in terms of global context. So it's a pity the setting up the global standard, the efforts is halting, not making progress because of this geopolitical tension. Is a pity because a fragmented standard setting would be really a bother to later on the efforts to make a globalized standards. So that's the current situation. With that, okay, we have only 10 minutes, so let's have some short discussion among panelists, and then we had 2 questions from audience. I'm going to share the question with you. Okay, first question is regarding to the Bruce. It is known that there is investment dispute chapters in RCEP does not exist. It's quite rare. Normally, multilateral trade agreements has the kind of dispute settlement chapter to secure the investment, foreign direct investment to the regional area. But this RCEP does not have. Do you think is necessary? That if so, why it is so necessary? Bruce.
Yeah, thank you. So, investor-state dispute settlement provisions have a long history, of course, in trade negotiations. They've been controversial at times. I noticed that in the COP meeting in Belém, there were NGOs who were sort of making suggestions about banning the provision for ISDS, and it is a controversial area of of discussion in trade policy circles. Now, there are very many investor-state dispute settlement agreements of one sort or another, more than 3,000, I believe. Often they're negotiated as IPPBAs, investment protection and promotion agreements, rather than investor-state dispute settlement provisions in specific trade agreements. They all have a different character. The one thing I would say is if you compare the progression of such provisions over several decades, it's become clearer and clearer that such agreements to attract the support of populations and constituencies, they have to ensure that they include the right sort of protections to make sure that the state's ability to regulate for public welfare or environmental management, national security or public services is preserved. And the most modern such provisions do indeed do that. So it's not about water. For instance, water is an important public good, which is often talked about in this sort of context. So, of course, ADB doesn't have a position as such on investor-state dispute settlement, but we do think that to ensure access to good quality investment, it's important that you provide a coherent framework for investment protections of one sort or another. Investors may well have issues that relate to the possibility of expropriation, about unfair treatment vis-a-vis either national or other third-party investors, about issues like that. So it is important both that there be a framework in which investors' rights are provided some level of protection, and that that's balanced with the right sort of protections for the state's ability to regulate in areas that it chooses to regulate. I would say that the total regime is much stronger to the extent that the agreement promotes deep integration, including in all the relevant areas of regulation. That provides transparency and predictability, which is an important part of avoiding disputes arising. So maybe given the time available, I'll just leave it at that. If I can add just one other comment, Ernesto talked about the WTO. I just want to assure your audience that actually ADB has also doubled down on its cooperation with the WTO. I opened a working session with the CAREC members together with the WTO DG, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, just a couple of weeks ago, where we're working with the WTO to actually promote the regional cooperation that we're seeing in CAREC, and doing it in a way that's compatible and supportive of the multilateral system and approaches. So we give a lot of attention to supporting the WTO in many areas.
Okay. So let's reflect. Let's reflect the questionnaires raised by the audience. The two questions are similar. Under these geopolitical fragmentations, what's the best way to harmonize the policy coordinations? That's one question. Second question is the reciprocal tariff. The one-way tariff sanction is really would affect the trade investment. What's the best solution? Those questions raised by the questionnaires. So let me invite Ernesto. What's your insight? What's your solution from your perspective in this situation to secure policy harmonization or the redress the impacts of investment to the trade to the investment.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much for the question. I saw them also, yeah, indeed, in the chat box or in the Q&A. I think they're very good questions. Both questions are quite similar, although one emphasizes the more political side of it. I think I would say again, well, WTO. Thanks, Bruce, for your comment just now. And I know you've been doing, and ADB has been doing a lot on that. I think just in general, a remark, I think fragmentation is an impediment to cross or inter-regional investments. If the rules and conditions differ between regional arrangements. So on the one hand, on the other hand, it can strengthen the comparative advantage of a particular region. So basically amplify or strengthen that advantage. I think we're talking about investment here and fragmentation. I think fragmentation is a much larger problem. I think it's more pertinent in terms of supply chain disruptions that we've noticed. Of course, we've seen that during COVID, but we see that now too, with regions withdrawing to themselves and having these regional arrangements that help investment. So it has both advantages and disadvantages. But overall, I think fragmentation is not a good thing for a globalization and for having common rules that work for everyone and where might doesn't go over right. Thank you.
Okay, let me invite Professor Qinhua for these questions. You mentioned about you talked about the green financing given this situation, but it's quite well on that because of the geopolitical fragmentation and tensions. It's a bit difficult to implement the climate action, climate change issues, including mitigation. In that sense, what's the best approach for Asia Pacific region to address this climate issue? Still, we are facing this very difficult situation due to change of climate. So, in that sense, under this geopolitical tension or fragmentation, what's your insight as an advice to Asian member countries? What shall we do?
Thank you, Moderator. You raised a very, very important and interesting question. So no matter we like or don't like, we need to face with a great challenge. So I remember that when I was working in APEC, the energy working group, and APEC in Tokyo. So with my different APEC economists, the energy colleagues, then we are discussing the things if we should put the geopolitical the things issues into so what we have been doing about the green energy cooperation and other things. So we think that we needn't to emphasize and strengthen and highlight the things, but we need to be very well prepared for the things happen. So one thing I think that the ADBI, this time the discussion on the line and with so many scholars and experts to face discussing the thing, the point, it's very valuable and important tolling for every different background persons to be understanding with each, not enlarge the misunderstanding with each other. I think this is the base for the centralization and also regularization, other things. So we can manage to do it. So I really appreciate ADBI. I give my thanks to ADBI. Do the things often. And we want to contribute a lot.
Okay, let me invite Leilei. In terms of equal treatment, I'm going to give you one question to you. You mentioned about the financial cooperation among ASEAN member countries, CMIM also. I'm curious, what's the future of CMIM? What's going on? Please share with us what the future or what challenge if you face, if you recognize, please share with us and what's the solution? Okay, what's the future of the CMIM?
Okay. Thank you very much. So Qingmai Initiative multilateralization, it's a $240 billion a web of bilateral swap agreements. And under this initiative, actually, there's also AMRO, ASEAN Plus 3 Macroeconomic Research Office. I think Qingmai Initiative, ASEAN Plus 3, essentially now exploring the new financial structure for Qingmai Initiative. There are two models in the world. One is adopted by the Europe countries, that's European Stability Mechanism that relies on the capital market to provide a regional financial safety net. And then the other model essentially is the IMF model, which has a membership. Members pay the capital into the institution, and the institution utilize the capital to lend to members when the members are in crisis. I think ASEAN Plus 3 is now exploring the paid-in structure, which means if that structure is approved by the ASEAN Plus 3, that would be Asian Monetary Fund. It's very similar to IMF, International Monetary Fund, which would be a very significant step for ASEAN Plus 3, its financial cooperation and its economic cooperation. So that's the right step. That's the future. It might take a lot of time because we just discussed fragmentation, political fragmentation, economic fragmentation. But I think the trend is there. And ultimately, economics would transfer politics. I believe so. So this is the underlying logic for economic integration. Thank you. Let me stop here.
Okay, thank you so much. You were excellent and brilliant insight sharing. I believe that all participants must be very impressed with your really the intellectual and views and approach on this topic. Let me wrap up this session. Yes, really, regional economic cooperation and integration is kind of a survival tool for Asia Pacific region under this geopolitical tension. In that sense, many audiences are welcoming this initiative, this agenda. So I fully understand that. And also the institutionalization of RCI is quite essential. In case of ASEAN, there is ASEAN. And for trade agreements, there is ATICA. And for investment, ACIA. Just the legalized the framework exists. But in case of CAREC and CESEP, I'm not sure how much the level of incorporation development. So in that sense, ADBI needed to provide some technical assistance or capacity building for those regions, Central Asia and South Asia, to have institutionalized economic framework, cooperation framework like ASEAN or RCEP. So for that purpose, we need to work together. So only slightly, I'm going to advertise ADBI's approach to attract foreign direct investment or trade among member countries with introducing streamlined, less costly, very speedy dispute resolution mechanism, so-called alternative dispute resolution. We are promoting this alternative dispute resolution across Asia Pacific region. So we have a policy dialogue, and also we are providing technical assistance and workshops and education courses, including e-learning course, inviting government officers to have this mechanism in their markets. If each Asian member country included this ADR system in their legal dispute settlement mechanism system in their country, and also they have the ratified Singapore Convention, then I believe that trade and investment will be facilitated among Asian member countries. For that, we are moving forward further for that purpose. Thank you so much for your kind attention and participation with a good question also, and very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over my microphone to Yao Xiao.